Vienna, 1922. A retired professor named Heinrich Albrecht walks into a bank vault. Inside, 12 gold bars. His family's entire fortune, accumulated over 4 generations. He had done everything right. While others panicked, he converted his savings to gold. While the currency burned, he held metal. While neighbors starved, he waited. 3 months later, the Austrian government passed the gold surrender decree. Heinrich's gold was confiscated at a fixed rate, a rate that represented 1/10 of its true value. By winter, Heinrich Albrecht was dead. Pneumonia, no medicine, no money, no gold. His neighbor, a farmer named Josef, survived with his family intact. Josef had no gold. He had 40 acres of potato fields and 3 dairy cows. Across every empire collapse in recorded history, a disturbing pattern emerges. Why do the people who prepare with gold keep dying? There is a belief so deeply embedded in human consciousness that questioning it feels like heresy. It crosses cultures. It crosses centuries. It crosses political ideologies. The belief is this: when everything falls apart, gold will save you. It sounds reasonable. It sounds ancient. It sounds like the kind of wisdom passed down from grandfather to grandson, whispered in wood-paneled studies, repeated in investment seminars, printed in survival guides, and it is perhaps the most dangerous financial myth ever created. Not because gold is worthless. It isn't. Gold has been money for 5,000 years. It has outlasted every currency ever printed. It glitters in central bank vaults from New York to Shanghai. It adorns the necks of the wealthy and fills the teeth of the desperate. But here is what the gold dealers won't tell you. Here is what the doomsday newsletters conveniently omit. Here is what Wall Street has carefully obscured for decades. Gold does not survive empire collapse. Gold holders do not survive empire collapse. The pattern is so consistent, so brutally repetitive across 3 millennia of recorded history, that ignoring it requires a kind of willful blindness. When Rome fell, gold holders died. When currencies collapsed in Europe, gold holders were stripped of everything. When the Soviet Union imploded, gold holders faced prison cells and firing squads. Yet the myth persists. Why? Because gold rises in the early stages of crisis. It rises when confidence erodes. It rises when currencies weaken. It rises when inflation begins to bite. And during this phase, the phase we are arguably living through right now, gold appears to be working exactly as advertised. This is the trap. Gold is the perfect early stage hedge and the perfect late stage disaster. It protects wealth precisely until the moment protection matters most. Then it becomes a liability, a target, a reason for governments to knock on your door at 3 in the morning. The wealthy families who have survived centuries of chaos, the Medicis, the Rothschilds, the merchant dynasties of Asia, understood something that modern investors have forgotten. They did not hoard gold. They accumulated something far more valuable, something that could not be confiscated with a decree, something that generated returns even when governments collapsed and borders closed. They accumulated productive capacity, land that grew food, businesses that provided essential services, skills that could not be nationalized, networks that transcended borders. This is not a theory. This is not speculation. This is the documented historical record, exposed across dozens of empire collapses, hundreds of currency crises, and thousands of wealth destructions. The pattern has never been broken. In the next 90 minutes, we will examine this pattern in forensic detail. We will walk through the specific moments when gold failed. Not in abstract terms, but with names, dates, and body counts. We will reveal the 5 stages of wealth destruction that repeat with mechanical precision across every empire collapse. We will identify the single asset class that has survived every crisis in recorded human history. And we will show you why the current moment, this precise window of 2024 to 2030, may be the most dangerous period for gold holders in a century. This is not financial advice, this is historical documentation. The evidence will disturb you. It should. Because if the pattern holds, and it has held for 3,000 years, then millions of people who believe they are prepared for what's coming are preparing for the wrong thing entirely. They are buying the one asset that looks like safety, but functions as a trap. They are buying gold, and by the time they realize their mistake, the window to do anything about it will have closed. The countdown has already begun. November 1923. Berlin. A woman named Margarete Haas stands outside the Reichsbank on Jägerstrasse. In her hands, she clutches a small leather pouch containing 3 gold coins, her grandmother's wedding gift, hidden for 30 years. The inflation has become unsurvivable. A loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks. Workers are paid twice daily because money loses value by lunchtime. Wheelbarrows of paper currency cannot buy a single egg. Margarete has gold. She believes she is safe. She is wrong. The Weimar government, desperate to stabilize the currency, has implemented strict controls on gold transactions. Private gold sales are monitored. Exchange rates are fixed by decree, rates that bear no relationship to gold's actual value. Black markets exist, but they are infiltrated by informants. The penalty for illegal gold trading: prison. Margaret converts her 3 coins at the official rate. She receives enough marks to survive for 11 days. Her neighbor, a baker named Wilhelm, survives the entire crisis. He has no gold. He has flour, yeast, and an oven. This is not an isolated incident. This is the pattern. 15 centuries earlier, the Western Roman Empire entered its terminal phase. The Roman elite were the wealthiest individuals the ancient world had ever seen. Their gold hoards were legendary. Coins stamped with emperors' faces, jewelry stripped from conquered peoples, bullion accumulated across generations of conquest. When the Visigoths approached Rome in 408 AD, the wealthy did what wealthy people always do. They gathered their gold. They prepared to flee. They believed their portable wealth would purchase safety, passage, new lives in the Eastern Empire. Most never made it. The roads were controlled by bandits, deserting soldiers, desperate refugees. Gold made travelers targets, not survivors. Those who reached the borders found them closed. The Eastern Empire did not want Rome's refugees, no matter how much gold they carried. Archaeological evidence tells the rest of the story. Across Italy, France, and Spain, archaeologists have uncovered thousands of Roman gold hoards, buried by owners who never returned to retrieve them. The gold survived. The owners did not. Meanwhile, the farmers who worked the land, the craftsmen who made essential goods, the local leaders who controlled food production, many of these families persisted. Their descendants still farm the same land 500 years later. The gold lies in museums now. The families who buried it left no descendants. December 1991, Moscow. The Soviet Union is dying. In its final months, the government makes one last desperate attempt to preserve state finances, a systematic confiscation of private wealth. Gold holders are particular targets. The KGB maintains detailed records of citizens who purchase gold through official Soviet channels. These citizens receive visits. The gold is purchased by the state at fixed rates, rates that amount to confiscation. Those who resist face Article 88 of the Soviet Criminal Code, violation of rules on currency transactions. The penalty, up to 15 years in a labor camp. During the Soviet era, thousands were sentenced under this article. But there is a deeper problem. Even for those who successfully hide their gold, the metal becomes worthless in practical terms. The Soviet supply chain has collapsed. Store shelves are empty. The ruble is disintegrating. Gold cannot be eaten. And converting it to food requires finding someone willing to make an illegal transaction. Someone who might be an informant. The families who survived the Soviet collapse intact were not gold hoarders. They were the families with dachas, small country houses with gardens. They were the families with practical skills, mechanics, doctors, electricians. They were the families with networks of trust built over decades. Gold was a burden. Productivity was survival. 3 civilizations, 3 collapses, 3 centuries apart. The same pattern, the same outcome. The same graves filled with people who did everything the financial experts recommended. This is not coincidence. This is not bad luck. This is a system, a 5-stage system that repeats with mechanical precision every time an empire enters its terminal phase. And if you understand these stages, if you can identify where we are in the cycle, you will understand why gold is about to fail again. Every empire dies the same way. not in a single catastrophic moment, but through a sequence, a 5-stage process so predictable that historians can identify it across civilizations that never knew each other existed. The Spanish knew nothing of the Romans. The French revolutionaries had no knowledge of Spanish fiscal policy. The American lawmakers of 1933 did not study the French assignat collapse. Yet they all followed the same script. They all created the same trap. And gold holders fell into it every single time. Stage 1. Confidence erosion. The empire still appears strong. The currency still functions. But underneath something shifts. Smart money. The old families, the connected insiders, the institutional players, begins to exit quietly. They don't announce their moves. They don't publish newsletters. They simply reposition. In Spain, this stage began around 1540. The treasure fleet still arrived from the Americas, loaded with silver and gold. But the Genoese bankers who financed the Spanish crown started demanding higher interest rates. They sensed what others could not yet see. During this stage, gold performs modestly. It rises slowly. It appears to be a reasonable hedge. Retail investors begin accumulating. This is the bait. Stage 2. Currency debasement. The government, facing mounting debts, begins to print, to inflate, to dilute. In revolutionary France, this stage began in 1790 with the assignats, paper currency backed by seized church lands. Initially, the assignats held value. The government promised restraint. They would only print what was necessary. Within 5 years, they had printed 45 billion livres. The currency lost 99% of its value. During this stage, gold soars. It doubles, triples. Gold holders feel vindicated. They tell their friends. They write letters about their foresight. They do not realize they are being herded. Stage 3. Capital controls. The government, watching wealth flee the country, closes the exits. Borders tighten. Currency restrictions appear. Gold transactions become regulated, then restricted, then suspicious. In Spain, Philip II banned the export of gold and silver in 1558. Just 1 year after the first of Spain is 6 sovereign defaults. Citizens who attempted to move gold out of the country faced imprisonment. Merchants who accepted gold in unofficial transactions faced asset seizure. During this stage, gold becomes difficult to convert. Official rates diverge from black market rates. Holding gold becomes legally complex and legally dangerous. Most gold holders do not sell. They believe the restrictions are temporary. They wait. This is the critical era. Stage 4. Confiscation. The government, having closed the exits, comes for the gold directly. The mechanism varies. Sometimes it is outright seizure. Sometimes it is forced conversion at artificial rates. Sometimes it is taxation so severe that holding gold becomes economically impossible. On April 5, 1933, President Franklin Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. All American citizens were required to surrender their gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates to the Federal Reserve. The penalty for non-compliance: 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine, equivalent to $230,000 today. The surrender rate was extraordinary. Americans handed over their gold at $20.67 per ounce. 1 year later, the government revalued gold at $35 per ounce, an instant 69% wealth transfer from citizens to the state. This pattern repeated in France, in Spain, in dozens of nations across the 20th century. During this stage, gold holders face a brutal choice: surrender at a loss or become criminals. Stage 5. System reset. A new currency emerges. A new monetary order is established. Gold holders who surrendered received a new currency at unfavorable rates. Gold holders who hid their metal find themselves unable to use it. The legal infrastructure for gold transactions has been dismantled. In 2013, Cyprus provided a modern preview. When the banking system collapsed, the government did not confiscate gold. They did something more elegant. They confiscated bank deposits directly. A bail-in. Savings above 100,000 euros were simply mobility taken. The template has evolved. The outcome remains identical. 5 stages, 5 centuries of evidence, 5 chances for gold holders to exit, and 5 reasons they never do. Because at every stage, gold appears to be working. Until the final stage, when it is already too late. The question is not whether this pattern will repeat. The question is, what asset class breaks the pattern? What survives when gold does not? Florence, 1494. The Medici family has just been expelled from the city they ruled for 60 years. A mob storms their palazzo. Their bank, the largest in Europe, collapses. Their name becomes synonymous with tyranny. They lose everything. Except they don't. Within 18 years, the Medici returned to power. Within a generation, they produced 2 popes and a Queen of France. Their descendants remain among Europe's elite for another 3 centuries. How? Not gold. The Medici vaults were emptied during the expulsion, not currency. The Florentine florin they helped create was useless in exile. The Medici survived on something far more durable, a network of productive relationships, expertise in financial systems that transcended any single institution, and, critically, land holdings scattered across Tuscany that continued generating income regardless of who controlled Florence. They owned vineyards, olive groves, farms that produce food, whether the Medici name was celebrated or cursed. This is the pattern that separates survivors from statistics. The Rothschild family understood this instinctively. When Nathan Rothschild built his London empire in the early 1800s, he did not hoard gold. He built a system, a network of information, logistics, and productive enterprises that stretched across 5 nations. The Rothschilds owned banks, yes, but they also owned mines, railways, shipping companies, land. When revolution swept Europe in 1848, dozens of banking families were destroyed. The Rothschilds emerged stronger. Their physical assets, their productive capacity generated returns regardless of which government held power. A mine produces ore whether the king is Louis or Napoleon. A railway moves freight whether the currency is francs or marks. A vineyard yields grapes whether the empire is rising or falling. This is not a philosophy. This is an engineering principle. August 1945. Japan lies in ruins. 2 atomic bombs have incinerated Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 66 cities have been firebombed. The economy has contracted by 90%. The currency is worthless. Gold holders, and there were many in Imperial Japan, find their metal useless in a nation where food is the only currency that matters. Yet within 15 years, Japan becomes an economic miracle. Who rebuilt it? Not the gold hoarders, not the currency speculators, not the families who buried treasure and waited for stability. The rebuilders were the industrial families who retained productive knowledge, the engineers who understood manufacturing, the agricultural communities that still controlled farmland, the entrepreneurs who could organize labor, secure raw materials, and create goods that people needed. Matsushita, Honda, Sony, Toyota. These names did not emerge from gold vaults. They emerged from productive capacity, the ability to create value from raw materials, labor, and knowledge. By 1960, Japanese investors who held productive assets had multiplied their wealth 100-fold. Gold holders had recovered a fraction of their pre-war value. The German industrialists tell the same story. When the Reich collapsed in 1945, the Krupp family lost everything. Factories, assets, bank accounts, even their freedom. Alfred Krupp was imprisoned for war crimes. Yet the family had something that could not be bombed, imprisoned, or confiscated. Institutional knowledge, engineering expertise, relationships with skilled workers, understanding of steel production that existed nowhere else. By 1953, Krupp was rebuilding. By 1960, the company was thriving. By 1970, it was again among Europe's largest industrial enterprises. Thyssen, Bosch, Siemens. The pattern repeats. These families did not survive because they held gold. They survived because they held capacity. The ability to produce things the world needed. 3,000 years of evidence points to the same conclusion. When empires collapse, 4 categories of assets survive. Land that produces food, enterprises that provide essential services, skills that cannot be confiscated, networks that transcend borders. Everything else, including gold, is subject to the 5 stages. But modern investors have been taught the opposite. They have been sold the gold myth by people who profit from the myth's perpetuation. The question is, who profits? And why has the gold industry fought so hard to suppress the historical record? On August 15, 1971, Richard Nixon made an announcement that changed the architecture of global finance. The United States would no longer convert dollars to gold at the fixed rate of 35 per ounce. The gold window, open since Bretton Woods, was closing permanently. Nixon called it temporary. It has been 54 years. What Nixon actually did was sever the last connection between paper money and physical reality. From that moment forward, all currencies became abstractions, entries in ledgers, promises backed by nothing but government credibility. Gold investors celebrated. With the dollar unmoored, gold would surely skyrocket. And it did, from $35 to $850 by 1980. Then it collapsed. For 20 years, gold went nowhere. Investors who bought at the peak waited until 2008 to break even. But the gold industry learned something valuable from this cycle. They learned how to market crisis. Since 2008, the gold narrative has become relentless. Every financial tremor produces a wave of gold advertising. Every currency fluctuation spawns another newsletter warning of imminent collapse. Every geopolitical tension generates another call to protect yourself with precious metals. The industry has perfected the art of fear monetization. And retail investors have responded. Gold holdings in exchange-traded funds grew from virtually nothing in 2004 to over 3,400 tons by 2024. Individual investors have poured billions into gold coins, gold bars, gold certificates. They believe they own safety. Most of them own paper. Here is the uncomfortable mathematics of modern gold investment. The total amount of gold in ETF vaults is dwarfed by the paper claims against it. For every physical ounce, there are estimated to be between 100 and 200 ounces of paper gold. Futures, contracts, options, synthetic instruments, and ETF shares that could theoretically be converted to metal. In October 2011, MF Global collapsed. This was a major commodities broker, a firm where thousands of investors held gold accounts. When the bankruptcy administrators examined the books, they discovered something disturbing. Customer funds had been rehypothecated, assets had been pledged multiple times. Gold that clients believed was sitting in vaults had been used as collateral for the firm is speculative bets. Clients received pennies on the dollar. The gold was gone. Central banks understand this fragility. Since 2008, central banks have become net buyers of gold for the first time in decades. China, Russia, Turkey, India, all accumulating physical metal at unprecedented rates. But note what they are doing. They are repatriating gold, demanding physical delivery from Western vaults. Venezuela attempted this in 2011, requesting return of 160 tons from the Bank of England. The process took years. Some gold was never returned. Germany requested repatriation of 674 tons from New York and Paris in 2013. The original timeline, 7 years. Why would it take 7 years to return gold that supposedly sits in allocated accounts, clearly labeled, waiting for its owner? Because the gold is not there. Or it is there, but it has been lent, pledged, hypothecated into a web of claims so complex that unwinding it takes years of negotiation. Central banks are preparing for something. They are accumulating physical metal, not paper, not ETFs, not certificates. Physical bars in vaults they control. Retail investors are buying paper. The trap is now fully constructed. When the next crisis arrives, and the debt mathematics guarantee it will arrive, gold will spike, paper gold will spike, retail investors will feel wealthy. Then stage 3 will begin. Capital controls, conversion restrictions. The difference between paper gold and physical gold will become apparent. And those who believe they own gold will discover they own a claim against institutions that may not honor it, governed by laws that can change overnight. But there is a deeper problem. Even physical gold holders face a danger they have not considered. The confiscation playbook has already been written. August 1972, Kampala, Uganda. Idi Amin gives the Asian population 90 days to leave the country. 90 days to abandon businesses built over generations. 90 days to convert a lifetime of wealth into whatever they can carry. The Ugandan Asians, approximately 80,000 people, faced the ultimate stress test of wealth preservation. Some had gold. It was confiscated at the airport. Some had cash. The currency restrictions made it worthless abroad. Some had property. It was seized by the state. What could not be taken? The doctors remained doctors. The engineers remained engineers. The merchants who understood trade, supply chains, and customer relationships carried that knowledge across borders. Within a decade, the Ugandan Asian diaspora had rebuilt extraordinary wealth. In London, in Toronto, in Leicester, not because they smuggled gold, because they possessed productive capacity that no decree could confiscate. This is the framework that separates survivors from victims. Productive assets are assets that generate value independent of government permission. They exist in 4 categories, and understanding these categories is the difference between preservation and destruction. Category 1. Agricultural land with water. Rights land that produces food has survived every empire collapse in recorded history. Not speculative land, not suburban developments. Land that grows crops, raises livestock, and controls water. When Zimbabwe seized white-owned farms beginning in 2000, the land itself was not destroyed. The farms collapsed because productive knowledge was expelled along with the owners. The land remained, and those who understood how to work, it retained value regardless of who held the title deed. Ownership structures matter. Confiscation risk can be mitigated through legal frameworks, family trusts, operational complexity. But the core principle remains. Land that produces food is the ultimate hard asset. Category 2. Equity in essential businesses. Not stocks, not publicly traded shares that can be frozen, taxed, or diluted by government decree. Direct ownership in businesses that provide essential services. Energy, logistics, food distribution, healthcare, waste management. Businesses that governments need to function, regardless of who runs the government. The Iranian diaspora demonstrated this after 1979. Families who fled the revolution with nothing but expertise rebuilt in Los Angeles, in London, in Dubai. They started businesses. They created value. Within a generation, the Iranian exile community controlled billions in productive enterprises. They did not rebuild with gold. They rebuilt with knowledge and relationships. Category 3. Irreplaceable skills and human capital. The Cuban doctors who fled Castro's revolution found employment within months. The engineers, the architects, the specialists, their skills translated across borders, across languages, across political systems. Skills that solve permanent human problems cannot be confiscated. Medicine, engineering, food production, energy systems. These are portable wealth that passes through every checkpoint. Gold sets off metal detectors. Knowledge does not. Category 4. Hard infrastructure. Energy production, storage facilities, transportation networks, water systems. These assets are difficult to build, impossible to move, and essential to civilization. Governments may nationalize them, but nationalization requires operators. Those who understand the systems retain leverage regardless of who claims ownership. 4 categories, 4 paths to survival. None of them involve gold. This is not theory. This is the documented record of every wealth destruction event in modern history. The families who held productive capacity rebuilt. The families who held gold became footnotes. The question is no longer historical. The warning signs are now flashing. And the window to reposition from gold to productivity is narrower than most investors realize. December 2001, Buenos Aires. Maria Costanza has done everything right. For 15 years, she has saved dollar-denominated accounts in Argentine banks, protection against the peso's endless instability, her retirement, her children's education, her safety net. On December the 1st, the Argentine government announces the Corralito, a freeze on all bank withdrawals. Maria can access 250 pesos per week. Her life savings sit behind glass, visible but untouchable. Within weeks, the government converts dollar accounts to pesos at an artificial rate. 2/3 of her wealth. Gone. Not through theft, through policy. Gold holders faced similar treatment. Capital controls prevented conversion. Border restrictions prevented export. Those who tried to flee with gold faced confiscation at airports and customs checkpoints. This was not a century ago. This was not a failed state. This was a G20 nation 23 years ago. The playbook is not theoretical. It is operational. Greece, 2015. The banks close for 3 weeks. ATM withdrawals are limited to 60 euros per day. Capital controls prevent transfers abroad. Citizens queue for hours to access their own money. The European Central Bank, supposedly the guardian of financial stability, watches and waits. The message is clear. Your money is not your money. It exists at the pleasure of institutions that can revoke access overnight. Lebanon, 2020. The banking system collapses entirely. Depositors with millions in their accounts cannot withdraw funds. The Lebanese pound loses 90% of its value. Gold dealers are mobbed. But gold cannot be legally exported, cannot be easily converted, cannot buy medicine or passage out of the country. The pattern accelerates, the intervals shorten, the mechanisms grow more sophisticated. And now the final piece of infrastructure is being assembled. Central bank digital currencies. CBDCs are not a conspiracy theory. They are official policy. The European Central Bank is developing the digital euro. China's digital yuan is already in circulation. The Federal Reserve has published extensive research on a digital dollar. The stated purpose: efficiency, faster transactions, lower costs, financial inclusion. The unstated capability: total surveillance and absolute control. A CBDC allows a central bank to track every transaction in real time, to freeze accounts instantly, to implement negative interest rates that cannot be avoided by holding cash, to program money that expires, if not spent, that cannot be used for certain purchases, that can be revoked for any reason or no reason at all. Gold becomes irrelevant in a CBDC system, not because it lacks value, but because converting gold to spendable currency requires passing through a digital checkpoint that the government controls completely. The exit doors are being welded shut. Where are we in the 5 stages? Stage 1, confidence erosion, began in 2008. The smart money has been repositioning for 16 years. Stage 2, currency debasement, accelerated in 2020. Global money supply expanded by over 40% in 2 years. Inflation appeared, was declared transitory, then proved persistent. Stage 3, capital controls, is emerging now. Tax reporting requirements on foreign accounts, cryptocurrency regulations, proposed wealth taxes, exit taxes for citizens who renounce citizenship. The pattern is unmistakable. The timeline is compressing. Based on historical precedent, Stage 4, confiscation, typically arrives within 5 to 10 years of Stage 3's implementation. The mechanisms vary. The outcome does not. The elite families are already moving. BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, has shifted billions into farmland, infrastructure, and essential services. Sovereign wealth funds are acquiring ports, water utilities, energy assets. The billionaire class is buying ranches, productive land, operating businesses. They are not buying gold. They are buying what survives. In Vienna 1922, Heinrich Albrecht believed gold would save him. In Berlin 1923, Margaret Haas believed gold would save her. In Moscow 1991, Soviet citizens believed gold would save them. In Buenos Aires 2001, Maria Costanza believed dollars would save her. In Beirut 2020, Lebanese depositors believed banks would save them. The belief was always the same. The outcome was always the same. You are living in the late stages of a debt cycle that has no historical precedent in scale. Global debt exceeds $315 trillion. Debt to GDP ratios in major economies surpass levels that have preceded every major currency collapse in modern history. The mathematics are unsolvable. The debt cannot be repaid. It can only be inflated away, defaulted upon, or confiscated from those who hold the wrong assets. Gold will rise in the early stages. It will feel like safety. It will feel like wisdom. It is neither. The families who survive the next decade will not be those who hoarded gold. They will be those who understood what Heinrich Albrecht learned too late, what the Roman aristocrats discovered in their final hours, What every goal holder in history has learned at the moment it no longer mattered. Gold is not wealth. Productivity is wealth. And the window to convert one into the other is closing. This is not pessimism. This is historical documentation. The pattern has never been broken.